Hello. So today is a collation of all the student journals at the summer school I teach at Jesus College in Cambridge every year. This was zoology class, and the students had a couple of weeks to put these together. It was meant to be 15 sides per student, and these were done in lovely A3 cartridge paper books, which I took a copy of before I handed them back. So starting with Vitor's, he's done some lovely work here on sexual selection, on invasive species, and lots of nice little drawings here on megafauna and on bugs. We had a wonderful visit to the Cambridge Insect Room behind the scenes in the Museum of Zoology, supervised by my good friend Russell. And here we've got a lovely drawing of the bone structure of pterosaur wings. This reminds me that one of my PhD colleagues, Matt Wilkinson, is a world expert on pterosaur flight. Next student is, bear with me, is Ava. I'd forgotten the order for a bit. She did some really lovely drawings of this, starting with this lion, excuse me, and lots of the students love the topic of behavioural ecology, as epitomised, maybe is the right word, by Professor Nick Davis at Cambridge University. So we did a lot on lion behaviour, a lot on cuckoos, because they're absolutely amazing, and then a lot on heroes. Now, I tried to introduce a lot of less well-known heroes, but we all quite rightly have a crush on David Attenborough, so that's entirely as it should be. One of the classic examples of sexual selection and indeed of a modern extinction is the Irish elk. That's probably a 9-foot pair of antlers. And then Ava's moved on to invasive species and to Diamond's evil quartet of factors which cause extinctions. Now some female heroes, including, of course, two of Leakey's 3 ape researchers, the other one being Bruti Galdikas. Some other heroes, including 2 members of the Darwin family. We often forget that Erasmus was also a great scientist. And then evolution. It's good to remind everyone that evolution is not natural selection. Natural selection is one of 4 parts of evolution. Then a bit on rewilding. We talked about Monbiot's work and about how rewilding is not just of nature but also of the human mind. And then onto sexual selection, which can be really lovely examples of animal behaviour, including the handicap hypothesis and the sexy son. And then we moved on to conservation, and here we've got the history of the kakapo, which got down to a population of something like 30 in New Zealand. And then finally, this trip to the insect room, and we had an amazing time, kindly supervised by Russell Stebbings. And then I also gave a lecture on insect morphology, which is the first teaching I ever did 20 years ago. She's chosen a bit more animal behaviour here. This is the lac optimum graph from Lack's work on great tits. And then she really got her teeth into Tinbergen's 4 whys. The idea there are 4 different questions we should ask in behaviour and in most parts of biology, in fact. Now moving on to Kira. Kira is a fantastic artist, as you can see. Sorry, I've got a bit of a croak. And she also chose to start her book with infanticide. And then cuckoos, because they're amazing. So you can see these students are 15 to 18. So they've done a huge amount of work in both class time, but a lot of homework time as well. And Kira really got into the megafauna and the animals, particularly mammals, that went extinct in the last 60,000 years. We've got a cave bear there. We've got a smilodon. Not a cave bear, sorry. A wolf and a smilodon. And then she got into chameleons. And again, lots of interest in the Irish elk, and it being the greatest example of male ornamentation, certainly in terms of physical size. And she's moved on to that again with antelopes and peacocks. And again, the insect room had a massive impact on the students. They really loved it. Another thing I talked about was the impact of domestication on animals, and in fact the impact of domestication on human history is really interesting. And I actually didn't get to teach all I wanted to, but Kira has used her initiative and has fleshed out some information from my slides for neurology and sonar. Next is Lauren. She actually won the class prize, although I could have given it to Zenshin, but anyway. And again, she's got really into cuckoos. She's got really into oxpeckers. They were believed to be symbionts until the 1990s. When it emerged, they're actually parasitic. And then she's had a deep dive into honeybees, including the marginal value theorem of foraging, top left graph, and the different graph ideas in terms of how honeybees work. Again, the elk and the kakapo, wonderful, wonderful animals. And then rewilding. She had a really good deep dive into that. And then she's got her lions section later on. It's always optional what students choose. I mean, there's a lot of material I cover, so they sort of choose their favourite bits. And then we've again got evolution, the 4 parts of evolution, and looking at bottlenecks in things like the Chatham robin. Then Tinbergen, some more behavioural ecology, and then the idea of heteroparity and semilparity, whether you have one breeding season or several. A lot of love for insects, good to see. And again, she's pulled out some of my untaught material from my slides and has done a really good deep dive into neuro. And she's finished her book off with animal behaviour in terms of group living, and a nice graph there at the bottom showing the conflicts. Now Zenshin, he's the youngest member of the group, he's only 15, so I was very impressed by his maturity, and it's a beautiful, beautiful journal. And he always did the washing up as well, which was nice. So we've got trophic cascades, we've got rewilding, using the classic example of Yellowstone National Park, and then invasives, and then the massive problem of the Burmese python in particularly Florida, and the lionfish, which is a massive problematic invasive in the Caribbean, and the pros and cons of sexual and asexual reproduction, because sexual reproduction is very expensive. And then another couple of examples of amazing species. We have the Komodo dragon, which is extant, it is not extinct, the world's largest lizard, of course. And then some extinctions, and then Darwin's finches, and we also talked about the intelligence of corvids. Very, very smart animals indeed. Jesus is normally full of them. And then he's also added some information on sharks and on mimicry. So, wonderful piece of work. And then the orchid mantis. The orchid mantis has been shown to be more attractive to pollinators than the orchids it copies. So a lovely example to illustrate. And finally, here are some group photos. This is an insect day when everyone's probably a little bit jet lagged. This is the Natural History Museum. The blue whale in the main hall. A group photo in the History Museum. Absolutely blinded the students getting them for this. Does look nice. And then wildlife photography in the botanics. They did move on to things a little bit wilder. Shot of a snail I took at Jesus College. This is Ava photographing one of my insects with a close-up lens. And this is the fantastic Cairns birdwing in the insect room. And this is them for scale with some of us. Really, really special time. Really good. And this is Papilio ulysses, which is one of Australia's greatest butterflies. And here are Zen and Vitor messing around in the insect room. We had a wonderful, wonderful time. And this is Professor Veal talking about Drosophila research, old friend of mine. And this is one of the students doing it herself. And this is Pembroke College. We had a break and went exploring. This is a newly converted church. And the Zoology Museum, where I worked for many, many years with the elk above. And this is Darwin's box of beetles. And the final party at the end. Well, funny hot day. Close-up photography, I think this is me. And a very, very sweet card, which they kindly gave me, which had me absolutely made up. It was gorgeous. Really, really nice. Sorry this has all gone a little bit quickly, but hopefully you found it interesting. And thanks for watching.